Hey, welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, we're going to talk about the economic impact of COVID-19 on the universities, but first, how about the legislature and what, a $40 billion state budget? As they say, let's get to it.
Welcome to the fast-paced and unrehearsed weekly discussion featuring the leaders who help shape your world. Join us as we address the issues that impact you each and every day. This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
Welcome back. Well, we're going to spend a good bit of time on education in this program, both higher education and basic education. Translation, the school districts. When you say basic education, I'm not sure I even know what that means. At any rate, sitting across from me is Jan Murphy. She's the Capitol reporter for PennLive, Patriot News, and a frequent guest on the program. She writes a good bit about the state budget and, of course, education. Yeah. I'll tell you what, the governor has proposed the budget, which we've talked about before, and now they're into the intricacies of it, correct?
Yeah, this week the House started its budget hearings, and in those hearings they dissect every aspect of the budget and occasionally stray into areas that are outside the department secretary that has this before them. The Senate's budget hearings are going to start the middle of next month, so it's kind of usually they run simultaneously.
But here's the point: you can't blame Governor Wolf for putting on the table what he wants the legislature to do. That's what governors do, as you know from covering it for a good bit of time. That's point number one. Point number two: that doesn't mean the legislature will adopt what the governor recommends. And we're talking, depending on who you listen to, about $37 billion or $40 billion with a personal income tax hike. And let's be candid with you. We have and I'm using this not political in any sense and not derisively, but we have a very conservative legislature and we have a very liberal governor. And again, I'm just using those as descriptively. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, does Governor Wolf have is there any possibility a state income tax hike passes and,
Wow. It's, it'll be interesting to see. I get a strong feeling that the Republicans want no part of a personal income tax. They say during a pandemic is not when you do that. They talk about the impact that would have on small businesses. And, on the other side, Democrats talk about the number of low-wage workers that really need this kind of a break during a pandemic. So it's, it really is. As some people will say, the governor swung for the fences in hopes that he can just get on base and with something, because his budget proposal was very aggressive and bold and his next to last year. So it's why not? Yeah,
why not? And he's not seeking re-election, so he doesn't have to live with a fallout, with an income tax hike proposal. All right, one of the things you really focus on are basic ed that we're talking about, elementary, middle, and high schools, and the related areas with the staff and with the sports. The fact of the matter is, if we go back to a year ago, the education got flat funded, meaning no increase. And so the governor now went for full bore ahead with this in terms of the economic impact of the budget.
Yeah, and what he's proposing to do is fully fund the fair funding formula that the state adopted 5 years ago. And that formula, since its adoption, has only been used to all the new money that's put in every year into basic education gets funneled through that formula. Everything else goes through the old system, which, and always based on the theory that no school district gets less one year, compared to the prior year. And it has resulted in, some big discrepancies in what school districts receive. So the governor.
So there's sort of the rich school districts and the poor school. Is that a reasonable way to put it?
Well, but it's, the formula looks at poverty, concentrations of poverty, the number of English language learners, and also takes into account enrollment. And that's one of the complaints has been some of the the districts that aren't growing are continuing to get the same amount of money or more. And while some of the like urban school districts and some of the even wealthy suburban ones, like the highest example is York Suburban, where the superintendent, they're supposed to get a 304% increase in their state subsidies under this fair funding formula. And the governor's proposal. And the superintendent there just kind of laughs, but he said, the thing is, right now they only get like $813 or $14 per student from the state.
So there is a big inequity.
Yeah, and like some districts are getting $7,000, $8,000 per student from the state. So there is an equity problem, and there is a lawsuit pending in the Commonwealth Court on that.
All right, we're going to run to a break. I'll tell you, we've taken up the minimum wage and recreational marijuana. They're also, a big emphasis for Governor Wolf as he goes through his final 2 years. And we'll take that subject up with Jan Murphy after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania State Education Association and Partners for Public Education, bringing the power of a great education to our schools, our students, and our communities. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Please visit pahighwayinfo.org. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Well, Governor Wolf is pursuing, again, raising the minimum wage. The state's minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. By the way, President Biden is doing the same thing at the federal level. And we also want to talk a bit about recreational marijuana. Now, I know we've done those subjects before, but they're very important. There's a lot of interest in the public for both of these, some, for or against. There's no doubt about that. All right, Jan Murphy, let's start with the minimum wage. It hasn't been raised. I can't remember the last time it's been raised.
It's been a while. I wish I had that number. But
that's okay.
I know Tina Tartaglia, Senator Tartaglia from Philadelphia, every day she gets on the floor, she tells how many days it's been.
How many days it's been?
We're in the thousands.
Yeah. So it's a very important subject. There's no doubt about it. And there's very divided opinions on it in the legislature.
Yeah, there is. I mean, especially now in a pandemic, the Pennsylvania Chamber says, businesses can barely keep their doors open, and now you want to force them to have to pay their workers more. Where's the money coming from? And but on the other hand, there are some small businesses that already are doing more than the minimum wage, and they're supportive of the idea of raising the minimum, because they already aren't paying it. But there's, in Pennsylvania, that's what I saw. The Independent Fiscal Office said that, as of this year, only Virginia and some other outfit is, I don't know who that is, but that they have a lower minimum wage than Pennsylvania, or the same, I should say. They're all at $7.25, and it's in all the states, in our surrounding states. I mean, they're all higher than ours, and so that's what they say. People are going to be leaving Pennsylvania. Another reason people will leave Pennsylvania is because we don't have a higher minimum wage.
As I've said, we've talked about this. We're going to continue to talk about it. As I said, I've gotten into this in the past. I thought they might do $8 or $9 an hour, maybe not go to 12, which is what the governor wants to do right now, and then 50 cents a year until it gets to $15 an hour. Is that possible? Compromise possible?
I think that we have seen from out of the Senate a few years ago, there was a willingness to go, higher with a higher minimum wage, not, $12 or whatever, but. It seems like that got bogged down in some other issues, and if they would just pass a clean minimum wage bill, we might see it pass, but probably not the path that the governor wants, setting us on a course to get a $15
All right, before I let you go, let's talk about recreational marijuana. The voters in the state favor it.
They do.
Other states, I forget the number of states, but there's a fair number that have legalized it. or at least reduce the impact of it legally, if you get caught with a small amount of pot. Can I say that? Pot, marijuana.
Weed, I mean, there's all kinds of names you can use for it. Cannabis.
Yeah. Again, is this likely?
People say that not this year, but there is a sense that in a few years that Pennsylvania will be jumping on board this train, and in part because our surrounding states are all getting in on the game, and that's money that Pennsylvania is losing then.
Well, we know the young voters favor it, right?
They do. I mean, well, the majority, whenever the lieutenant governor was on his marijuana legalization tour,
sure.
I attended several of those meetings, and there was a good bit of support among seniors and even Republican seniors who said it's time to pass this, and veterans. I mean, it was some of the Republican voters that were supportive of it. So that's why I just think it's just a matter of time that we will come around.
Yeah.
But
well, look, I want to thank you for coming on, and as they say, stay safe. All right, we'll be back, and we're going to talk about the impact of COVID-19 on the universities, plus a lot more after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by
Cross-State Credit Union Association. Credit unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, go to ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Association of Pennsylvania State College and University Faculties, representing the faculty and coaches who are devoted to providing quality public higher education for Pennsylvania's college students.
Well, we're going to talk about a big subject, and that is the impact of a whole variety of things on the public universities in the state of Pennsylvania. Now, as a graduate of one of them, Millersville University, and a longtime faculty member, and I'm currently back helping the university out at Millersville. I can't always be neutral, but I'm going to try, given my work history. Joining me to talk about a whole variety of subjects dealing with the public universities is Jamie Martin. She's a professor at Indiana University of Pennsylvania, and also the president of APSCUF, the Association of Pennsylvania State College and University Faculties. Jamie, welcome.
Thank you, Terry. And I have to be honest, I'm a graduate of the system and have worked in the university for a long time, so I can't be neutral either.
I know, I have trouble. The host is supposed to be neutral. I'm going to try. It's very difficult. All right, economic impact on the 14 all universities, but obviously, given what you do, representing the faculty and the coaches at the universities, what's the impact on the 14 owned public universities? Economic impact.
Sure. I mean, you and I have talked before, and you're aware of where these universities are located across the Commonwealth, and often they're going to be one of the largest employers in those small rural communities where they're located. And the impact, as you're well aware, for faculty, staff, and coaches in terms of their employment and what they're bringing in terms of tax revenue and those kinds of things, but also just being there and buying locally. I mean, I think of my own situation, buying vehicles, supporting salons, coffee shops, pizza shops, brew pubs, all of those kinds of things. And there was a study done a few years ago that suggested the economic and employment impact of our 14 universities is about $6.7 billion in the Commonwealth. So for every $1 that the legislature invests in our universities, the return is tenfold. So about $10 coming back. So the impact is huge. And also for our students, when they're in our communities, we know that they're bringing a lot of employment and, their dollars into our communities. So it's a huge impact.
Yeah, and there's no doubt that COVID-19 has had a huge impact on, not just on, in basic ed, elementary, middle, and high schools, and universities and colleges all over our state and all over our country. What's the impact, a couple of the important aspects of the impact of COVID-19?
Clearly, major impacts for the universities, I think, have been in terms of housing. So the students, many of the universities, you're back to Millersville. I don't know how many students are back in person in the Lancaster area, how many are back at IUP. So we're seeing fewer students. And so when they're not there and not living in housing, you're losing the housing income. In terms of the tuition, the enrollments weren't off that much. And so the tuition income probably wasn't as hard hit. But then there were things like having to make classrooms, provide for technology and make them Zoom enabled, those kinds of things. So there are going to be cost associated. There was some, with the CARES Act and some other funding that came in that offset those costs at some level, but certainly there's been an impact.
But the public universities as well, the public schools were flat funded by the legislature and the governor in a deal that they worked out to pass the budget last year, and so you don't expect you can be optimistic about this flat funding this year.
And given what was happening, we were appreciative that we were flat funded. Some agencies probably lost funding. We're hopeful that we'll see a small increase at least in the upcoming budget situation. And the governor did roll out the Nellie Bly scholarship proposal that would lead to scholarships for students at our public universities. And so that would be a huge help for the students as well.
All right, we're going to run to a break. When we come back, I want to talk about the big changes in the structure, sometimes referred to as university consolidation, that's taking place. I think it's six of the universities. You'll correct me if I'm wrong.
That's correct.
And we'll get to that after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Medical Society. Inspired physicians committed to the good health of Pennsylvanians and the advancement of the practice of medicine.
Well, I'm talking with Jamie Martin. She's the president of the Association of Pennsylvania State College and University Faculties. We're delighted to have her on. All right, there's a big thing that is referred to as university consolidations. And so, first of all, explain what that means, and then what would its impact be on students and parents?
Sure, and thanks for asking about that. So the plan right now is to take 3 universities in the north central part of the Commonwealth and 3 universities in the western part. So in the north central, it would be Bloomsburg University, Mansfield University, and Lock Haven University. And in the western region, Edinburgh, Clarion, and California universities. So the consolidation, right now, it's interesting as we're listening to the chancellor, he's still talking about a plan being developed. But what he has articulated so far is that in each of those regions, the 3 will become one entity, one university with one accreditation, one faculty, one program array, one budget, one enrollment strategy, but that the 3 campuses will remain. And the same with the Western trio or triad. So the concern, we're waiting to see what the plan actually will be. And we have, faculty, staff, administrators that are working on developing the details. But some of the concerns that we have and are anxious to see are for our students. So for example, if I want to attend Edinburgh University because I love the snow, and I want to,
we have it here too.
And I want to major in political science. Am I going to be able to finish my full degree, 4 years, complete my degree at Edinburgh in political science, or am I going to have to take some of my classes online at California or Clarion? Likewise, if I want to be a geology major at Lock Haven, can I finish my degree there? Or will that program even be at Lock Haven? Will it only be available at Mansfield? So we have a lot of questions about what will be the impact on our students' opportunities. The chancellor said it'll be increased opportunities, but we want to see the details of that. And the other thing that he's talked about is reducing costs. And initially we were thinking, reducing tuition and fees, which we would always be in favor of for our students. But the things he's talking about are student behaviors that they can do right now. So for example, going to a community college for 2 years and then going to a university would reduce costs. Taking AP courses in high school could reduce costs. Not living on campus could reduce costs, but students can do that right now at all 14. So that's not going to be an offshoot of consolidation, for example.
Yeah, I guess in a word or two, it's complicated.
It's very complicated. We're also worried or concerned about our student athletes.
Oh yeah, sports.
Right, and our coaches. And so they're awaiting a ruling from the NCAA to see if they'll be able to have sport teams at each of those 3 campuses. So for example, could there be men's and women's basketball at Mansfield, at Lock Haven, and at Bloomsburg? Or is it because of the fact they're going to be one accredited university that can't happen? So those are, big questions. And our student athletes, those are great recruitment opportunities for those kids to come and play sports, but also they're retained at higher levels and bring a lot.
Oh, wow. Boy, it does have its complications. But before I let you go, let's talk about money solving the financial challenges that face the universities. Short answer is you need money from the state legislature. Is that
right? And again, we know that there are budget difficulties, I'll say right now, with COVID. But the fact is that since that recession in 2008 and then the Corbett administration that, really cut funding by about 18%, we've not really recovered from those cuts. And so we're still ranked somewhere near the bottom of state funding, maybe 47th, 48th, 49th in the amount of support public education receives. And so I've often said, those are not policy decisions, but at some level, ethical or moral decisions. Are we going to fund higher education? Are we going to fund corrections? Are we going to, where are priorities? So we're hopeful that at some point we'll begin to see an increase in funding, which would be a huge help for all of our 14 universities.
Given the location of the public universities, the fact of the matter is that they serve a clientele, and a lot of first-generation students go there. It seems impossible that the legislature wouldn't fund them properly.
Right. Most of our students are Pennsylvania residents. Most stay in Pennsylvania when they complete their degrees. And we were supposed to be the affordable, high-quality option. And whenever we become more expensive, we're missing the group of students that we should be targeting.
Well, look, I want to thank you for coming on. Great update. All right, we'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers. And as always, stay well.